Hello and welcome, everybody. So my name is Steven, and this is the show where we bring together experts to break down some of the most fundamental topics in HR. And I have three amazing panelists here today. We're going to be discussing new hire questionnaires, and I'm going to intro each of these panelists now. We've got with us Heather Skillman, who's an HR strategist at the Skillman Enterprise. We've got Stephen Farber here, who's the talent retention Sherpa at Hero Culture. And last but not least, we have Sim Tucker, corporate recruiter at FIS. So we've got a great group here today, and we've got a fun topic, so new hire questionnaires. I think this is a lot more fun and kind of breezy and interesting than some of the more employee discipline topics that we get into here. So I'm really excited to kind of jump into all this. And I want to just get a definition out there because I think a lot of HR departments are not doing new hire questionnaires. And I want to educate them right in the beginning. What even is this thing? And Sim, I'd actually love if you could jump in and maybe just give us a basic definition. What are new hire questionnaires?
The new hire questionnaire is basically getting their viewpoint on how their initial weeks have been with the company, how their onboarding was, getting their opinions on how the recruiting strategy or the recruiting approach has been to them, and what information they were given, what we could change. Basically, getting to know what the process was for them, what difficulties they went across, and how we can kind of improve going further for them. And I know some companies do and some companies don't, and I know there are things that they should do in steps to make it a little bit smoother for all new hires.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, so sounds like it's basically like a survey, is that right, that you're collecting all this information on? I guess we'll go into that a little bit more later, but
I wouldn't necessarily say, I mean, it would kind of be termed a survey because basically you're taking that data to, deduce how to best approach the situation. And if there are any concerns or any things that need to be changed, you want to approach it and get those things changed, because at the end of the day, what the company may have been doing for all the years may not be relevant anymore to this current time. So if you are getting new people who are joining your company, they have new perspectives, they have new ideas, and it's always best to get those ideas, put it on paper, and implement it for better processes. Because that's if you make the new hire, your employees are happy, basically, their productivity is gonna go up. So that's the bottom line of that.
Yeah, sounds like if you don't have a questionnaire like this right in the beginning, you're just never going to know. Sounds like it's what you're saying. Right?
Yeah. And from my perspective, because I'm a recruiter, I am like the very first person that they talk to. So in my head, all my approaches are going to be from that perspective mostly. But then I even work hand in hand with our HRBPs to kind of smoothen some of the processes for them, because even they may not know from a market research perspective what changes they're coming, or what expectations are changing from candidates when they're trying to join a new company. So it's always an ongoing effort.
Yeah. Well, really appreciate that, Sim. I want to bring Stephen and Heather into this now. From what I hear from Sim, it sounds like a lot of new hire questionnaire can be around essentially onboarding or hiring feedback, right? Like the candidate experience. But what other ways have you guys seen kind of these new hire questionnaires used? Or are there some other, use cases that you've come into contact with? Stephen, if you have any thoughts, or we can jump to Heather.
Sure. I really only have one or two thoughts before you hand it off to the queen of questionnaires. That's who Heather is. She knocks us out of the park. But yeah, I think a really wise place a wise tactic to leverage in a situation like this is to go ahead and get an understanding of your new hire's preferences. And what I mean by that is when it comes to things like recognition, feedback, let me use recognition as an example. A good question in a new hire questionnaire is, say that you have accomplished something. How would you like to be recognized? How would you like to be rewarded, publicly or privately? That's huge. Stephen, you just shared the other day a huge lawsuit that had happened from someone who did not want to be recognized publicly, could have easily been avoided, saved lots and lots of money because that person had an anxiety problem. Now, that's not always the case, but if we want to retain talent, we want to make sure that we're speaking our new hires language. So being able to kind of get those preferences right off the bat. Do you want me to throw a party for you, or are you one of those people that just wants a pat on the back or an email in private? That's a good thing to know, especially when it comes to new hires. So Heather, I'll let you take it away from here.
Yeah, it's almost like I want to say ditto and ditto. So those are all, wonderful points. I'm not sure where to add on to it, but I think the main thing is it's also letting the new employee know we haven't forgotten about you. Because a lot of the times, if you're just working with them to get them on board and then suddenly like you're thrust into, here's your manager that you met once on an interview and now you're in with a whole new team. And so it's kind of a way of doing a check-in point. How are things going? Really knowing, again, as like Steve was saying, how would you like to be recognized? And also, how was the onboarding process for you? Is there ways of being able to do it? Because companies sometimes will do all employee surveys, but that includes like all employees. It's everybody, right? And you won't get that individual response. So this is a way of also having that retention piece of, we care about you as an individual. We want to set you up for success. And we need to know what that success would look like and how I can help support you from an HR standpoint, either bridging that with your manager, sharing some information with the manager, because it might be hard to set that up with your manager one-on-one, but having this information given to HR or another person can kind of help set that going forward as well. So those are some of the really great benefits to having that questionnaire.
Yeah. Yeah, this is great. I think you guys have outlined, really I'm hearing a couple of use cases here where it's like, one, you're getting to know the employee and making them feel special, and really, like almost sitting down with them, but with a survey or piece of paper or whatever. But then on the other hand, you're learning about the onboarding and what their experience was, and trying to learn how you can be better as an HR department. So I'd love to understand better, like, because these, those two use cases, it almost sounds like those would go out at different times. They almost sound like they could be like two different surveys even at some point. But like, when do you like to send out your new hire questionnaire? Is it, do we send it out right when they get hired? Do we send it a few weeks out, a few months out? Do we send at all those times? Sim, what are your kind of thoughts on that?
I personally would see, because I know at my company at least, and my previous companies that I've been, like, new hires have a lot of paperwork to fill out during their, first week anyway. They're already overwhelmed. They have to go through background check, drug screening, and then I-9 verification and all that good stuff, depending on company from company to company. I personally would prefer at least to give them a week or two to settle down, and then we can, that way at least they will get an idea to, one, have access to everything, because there are times where new hires may or may not be able to even get access to some of the stuff that they actually require to maybe even do their job or set up their benefits or, set up their 401k and things like that. So maybe give them like a week or two to get settled down, have access to everything, understand what is expected of them, give them the tools, at least they know where to go for stuff, and then, go for that, then throw in the survey and be like, okay, hey, you've been with us for 2 weeks. Give us your, feedback on how everything was and what we can kind of improve. And we want to know you as much as you want to know us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's awesome. Heather, do you have any additional thoughts on that, on the timing of these questionnaires?
Yeah, I think timing is important because, again, you don't want to have it, if you make it too far out, they would have forgotten their onboarding experience, because suddenly they're now thrust in the world of all of the stuff that they're supposed to be doing and learning, and like, oh my gosh, overwhelm worldness of things. So you don't want to make it too far out, but again, you don't want to do it like on day 1 too, because then it's kind of a little bit too intimidating. So I think like Sim's timing around the 2 to 3 week time frame is good. And I think if you wanted to break it down too, an even better approach too could be like working with the managers and saying, hey, with your new hire, here's the questions I think that you should be asking your new hire. So in a way, the new hire is getting a questionnaire, but they'll be able to build that relationship just with the manager. So then that way HR is not the one that's having to be in charge of having to do, how would you want to work with your manager? How would you want to be recognized? How would you want to do this? So I think there's a way of being able to do it in more subtle ways than always just that survey, but having it broken down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really clever. Well, I think we covered that really well. Go ahead. Were you jumping in?
Yeah, Stephen, what I also wanted to kind of add to that is knowing what a new hire feels. It should be an ongoing effort, not only from the HR, but also from the hiring manager, because HR is not the one who's working with them on a daily basis. So yes, as a hiring manager, during your one-on-ones, it's always best to kind of keep asking these questions until at least that new hire reaches 1 year tenure with the company, because all those questions are also going to be part of the performance reviews, right? Because they constantly would want to know how they're performing and stuff like that, because we want to know them, and then we want to provide them with the tools that's going to help them perform better as well. So I feel like those questions should be like an ongoing one-on-one sessions as well with the hiring manager and the employee. And then of course that feedback needs to be kind of sent to the HR so that they have that handy, because at the end, they're the ones pushing the papers for them.
Yeah. Well, sounds like a group effort. And I think you hit on something there in terms of like the hiring manager having a little bit more access and view into the new hire and who they are and how they're doing. I think we covered timing really well. And we've started to cover the topics, right? Like the things that should actually be in this questionnaire. But I want to really dive deep into that now and give each of you an opportunity to share maybe a few questions that you would like to see in a new hire questionnaire that you think are beneficial and that should typically be there. Stephen, I want to give this one to you first, then maybe we can work in reverse alphabetical order here. So then Sim and Heather. But Stephen, because you came in and mentioned, how do you like to be celebrated as one question to ask? I mean, what are some other questions you'd like to see on a new hire questionnaire?
Sure. I think it's good to get the future out there right away, or rather start with the end in mind. So even something as simple as, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you, a scale of 1 to 10, sorry. And 1 to 5 years, where would you like to see yourself in 5 years? That's what I'm trying to say. I'm just having the hardest time saying it. What is your trajectory? Kind of getting that future in place, and then really examining that answer. And you might want to word that a different way depending on who you are asking that question to. But I would definitely make it open-ended in such a way that they know that there's opportunity to progress there, that hey, you may have came in at this certain position, but like don't think that this is where you're stuck forever. Because I think that's like a hot spot for turnover, is when somebody starts to think, I am dead-ended here. I know it was for me. That was always like red flag number one, is if I can't promote, I guess I got to go. And it wasn't always the case, but it's how you and if you communicate that. So I think just any questions that can kind of put a future self in mind for the employee, showing them what they could be, who they could be in the future, is a good idea. I don't know. That's my take. Whoever's next can probably get some better advice than that.
No, I love that. Sim, do you want to jump in and share kind of your top questions you like to see asked?
Yeah, one of my top questions would always be, how was your onboarding process? And then the second would be, did you get access to everything that you need, or is there anything else from our side that we can provide you to set you up for success? And then if it's like, a couple of weeks down the road, we also want to know, have you met your team? How did you get a chance to meet your hiring manager, and what are your thoughts on them? And then kind of what, Stephen put out, to kind of let them know what their hopes are, what their expectations are into that particular role, and what's going to help them set up for success going forward.
Yeah, love it. Heather, over to you.
Yeah, and I think kind of playing around the success part is finding out, is how this role was presented to you, is it actually what you're doing? Because a lot of times what happens is like we go through the interview process, we see the job description, and then we do it. And then suddenly we realized, wow, there's a lot more, which could be either good or bad. That's where nuances that might not have been seen on there. So you just want to do a little touch point on that and ask them, how is it just like it? And how is it different? So they can get a good feel for it. Because if we do need to course correct, because maybe this was a project I thought I was going to be doing, but now I'm suddenly on this project here, we want to make sure that if they were hired because it was this project and they're doing something different, we make sure we can try and get them back into what that project was. So again, it's tying into kind of also what Stephen was saying was that career development to make sure that we're not going to start from the get-go and then go off on a completely different tangent. So that's why I like to ask them is, did what the job descriptions say you're going to be doing, are you actually doing it? And then you could also say, you know, how getting to know also how best do they work? You know, are you really better with being in a team, especially with hybrid and remote and not remote being such a big deal? Some people might need that team environment. They need to have that in-person connections. Other people might be like, peace out, just let me do my job and then I'll produce and I don't need it. So finding how they work best, I think, is also a really good thing that can help, especially with the management style and making them set up for success as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like, just knowing that little piece of information can change how the manager approaches their entire like relationship and work setup with this person. So a couple that I want to throw out as well, because I got a new hire questionnaire when I started here at Eddy, and there were a couple funny ones on there. There was actually like, what is your favorite candy bar? And I think maybe one, like, even like, do you like Harry Potter more or Star Wars? Like, there are a couple of things like that. You know, the candy bar, I want to say, like, it reappeared like on my birthday or something. They bought me that candy bar, right? And so I think there's a lot of interesting, just like small personal details that you can really gather from this information too. But okay, I think we got a really well-rounded list of kind of topics to cover. I want to talk about like actually collecting this information, right? Some of our people listening, they might be like smaller organizations where they can do like face-to-face conversations, but you know, large organizations, maybe it's more, you really do have to just use surveys and things. But how do you guys see it being most successful collecting, right, all this information that we've discussed? Stephen, maybe if you have a thought first, then we can jump over to Heather as well.
Yeah, really just echoing what you had just said, Stephen, is that that's a great opportunity to get information so that you can reward or bring those feel good energetic moments back to your workforce later on. You may, like, just the candy bar question, what's your favorite candy bar? Maybe they don't even like candy, like, I don't like candy, I like this. Like, well, get an answer and then use that as a motivation tool to actually show them that, hey, we care, right? And you can do so much with that. There's so many questions that you can kind of formulate there, but I think that is huge right there. Just learn about your employee and then use that information to reinforce the fact that you do care, that they're there as a person, not just a number that produces a certain amount of production to enforce the bottom line. Because they'll leave if they start to feel that way. Let them know that they're valuable, and then give them value in return, value that they actually will accept per their preference, and they'll thank you for it, and it'll show in their focus and their work ethic.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, okay, that's weird. Yeah, going really quickly back, Stephen, did you have any thoughts in addition just on like collecting the information? I know I kind of took you in a different direction, but
as far as how to collect it,
yeah, do you think like surveys, is there like a digital tool, and then we'll actually just open this up to the whole group if somebody has a particular tool that they like or have used before.
Looks like Sim might have something there. I know that there's simple tools out there. I use ClickUp for things that are like that, but there are more directed tools that can do that. I think Lattice is one that I've heard a lot of great things about, but I would probably just, for me, I stay simple with something like ClickUp or Excel, but I'd love to hear what everybody else has, especially if they have something more efficient in that area.
Yeah. Sim, did you have something you want to share?
Yeah, I personally think it is a very good idea to have these personal questions attached to their personnel profiles, in the sense like every employee has an employee profile somewhere in your database, right? Yeah. Have these personal questions attached to their employee profile, because say, for instance, I'm their HR person right now, I may end up leaving. Comes somebody else in my place, all they have to do is just go to the employee profile and get to know the employee, right? Rather than coming and asking all those questions again. Oh, by the way, you took this survey 2 years ago, we can't find it, or that platform is no longer active, or whatever the case is. So yeah, let's have you fill this out again, or you got to do it. The easiest would be to have it in their employee profile, because like you said, right, you entered and you said this was your favorite candy bar and you got it on your birthday next year. Some people, candy bar preferences keep changing. All the employee has to do is go into their profile and be like, hey, you know what, last year I liked Snickers, this year maybe I'll put something else and I'll put Cadbury fruit and nut in it, because it's changed. I don't like it anymore. So this way, one, the HR people wouldn't constantly have to keep up on things. This way, it will give more power to the employees to select and, change their own preferences and how to approach. Because at the end of the day, HR can only do so much. Sometimes it's always best to put the power in the employee's hand as well, because at the end of the day, it's their career, it's their life. They are the ones who have to kind of come and, do the job and things like that. Of course, everybody, hiring manager, HR is always there to help them out, but I think this would be the best option.
Yeah. Love that, Sam. Heather,
some of the tools, and especially if you're trying to gather data, like for the data points and the Likert scale of a scale of 1 to 10, or how is the onboarding experience, and you need to gather the data, because again, it's not a personalized one, but this is, you would preface it, we have some personal questions directed just to you, like what candy bar and everything like that. But then we also have, this is for us to kind of help as an organization, how we can improve, right? So when you're trying to get those improving things, that's going to be different than individual. So SurveyMonkey sometimes can be good because you can do the survey, then you can get the data. Google Docs is also nice because you can just create one survey, one link. They would click on it, and then if you send it to another person, they would click on it, and you can see the individual responses or the cumulative responses. So you can start getting the data points that you would need, and that's pretty low cost. But I think that those are the tools that I've seen that have been useful in terms of trying to gather data. Like if I had 100 new hires and I wanted to know from those 100, it'd be hard for me to see individual profiles and go through. But if I had a data point, like a tool that would bring those specific questions, that would really help out. So those are that I've used before.
No, it's a great insight that, some of the data, I mean, it's all going to be used in different ways. You almost need to store it and put it in different, sometimes it needs to be aggregated. I'm a huge Google Forms fan as well, Heather. So I'm glad you brought that up. 100% free. So it doesn't.
And Stephen's point too on Excel spreadsheet. I mean, and some people, if you're doing an individual and they send it out, it's kind of a pain. You'd have to individually put the, answers into the Excel spreadsheet. But once you do that, then you could easily manipulate the data for the ones that you would need for your own specific. So again, it's just going to depend on how large the organization, what your bandwidth is, and what's going to be, easiest and most accessible to, again, get the endpoint. What is my goal of wanting to do this questionnaire? And to figure out, once I know that, how that data can be utilized and how best to gather that data.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into kind of the last major topic I want to discuss together. And that is, how do we act on this information, right? Like, information is great, but if it's just sitting there, what was the point of ever collecting it to begin with, right? So I want to actually throw this back to you, Heather, and then actually get everyone's responses on it. So maybe then Stephen and Sim can chime in. But how do you use this information? Like, what are some of the use cases at the end of the day that you think are really valuable in terms of like actually changing the organization and taking action?
Well, I think one way is if they give feedback on an onboarding experience, they might have suggestions on how it could be better improved. So if you do make those improvements, you always want to go back to the source and say, hey, I want to thank you so much for the time you took. Here's some of the things that we're now implementing. Or would you like to be part of a discussion panel? Because we want to be able to do that. I know you had some thoughts. So that's one way of acting on it. The other way, good Lord, there goes my voice. I was just going to start sounding funny. I would think other ways is if you are talking about management styles or how best or careers or whatnot, and that's not something where the manager is being pulled into, you do want to be able to share that conversation with the manager and say, hey, just so you know, we've gotten this information. And as long as the employee knows at a time, this will be shared, because that's going to be important too. If I feel like this is only going to the HR person or the only person that's going to know about it, and then my manager comes to me and says, hey, I heard you said this, then that could also destroy trust. So make sure if you are going to share the information, they are aware of that. So that prefaces to set up. But you can also share it with the manager and say, hey, here's some things, make sure you can follow up with them. And again, it's that follow up, because you want to make sure that that's what you're doing with the information. You're acting upon it in ways that you can, and you want to show that through follow-up and check-ins and how are things going and have things changed. And like we said, you know, hey, you were a Snickers person. Are you into Twix now, or right or left, you know, whatever in the world of things. So, but that's what I would say, is make sure that you follow up and follow through on certain action items and let them know what you did, so they can feel like, hey, you really heard me and you validated what I would need and want. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, Sim and Heather, you guys are both speaking to me with this candy metaphor, because I think I have made the switch from Snickers to Kit Kat recently. And, I would want everyone to know that, I think. So, but anyways, Heather, I think like I love what you said about following, like, communication. Like, you're communicating with the person who gave you the feedback, and you're maybe sharing the feedback with someone who can act on it additionally, like the hiring manager or senior leaders or whatever. But Stephen, let's turn over to you. What thoughts do you have on, like, how do we use this data, this questionnaire data, to improve the organization?
Yeah, really everything that Heather said, you just using the data is number one. And I just want to enforce that. Follow up, use that data. Whatever your company has set up, either it's like a 30, 60, 90-day follow-up, again, going back to the future. You know, if you think about it like a sales metaphor, a lot of good salespeople will tell you, well, you're not going to sell anything unless you can convince the prospect what their future looks like and that it looks better with what you're doing. You know, it's the exact same way when it comes to a new hire. Like, can you show them how they are better off for having been with you 5 years down the road? And what does that look like? And not only that, but how do you get there? And that's going to take check-ins. That's going to take, hey, I know that you wanted to be a service manager when you first got here. Is that still a goal? Has it changed? How can I help you get there? Are you on the way there? Do you feel like you're being supported there? That's huge, because you're looking into somebody's future. That is, I mean, very few other people in someone's life are going to care about their future except for maybe their parents. It's that you're becoming a very, valuable, special person that cares about them. Definitely throw the Snickers bar in there. Honestly, it's all about Three Musketeers. I don't know what's wrong with y'all, but in the end, it's about showing that person that not only have they made this company better, but you continue to want to make them better, because in the end, training an employee is way better than having not being able to retain an employee. Excuse me, I messed that completely up. Retaining an employee is way better than having to retrain a new one. Retain, don't retrain. So anyway, that's all for me now.
Yeah, and I mean, sounds like, acting on that feedback is a great retention mechanism. So over to you for the last thought on this, Sim. What advice do you have for people on acting on the data they gather?
Same thing. Like, I'll echo both of them, Heather and Stephen, like, whatever they said collectively. And one of the important things for HR is for employees to know that the data they're providing is going to be used and put to a better use. And it's eventually for their own good and for their own betterment, because some people, they just fill out these surveys thinking, oh, they're just going to collect it and it's just going to sit in some dumb database and not ever being utilized. Whereas HR, that's where they should come in and be like, okay, hey, listen, follow up is what Heather said. And exactly that's what we need to do. That, hey, we spoke to you when you first came in. This is where we are at. This is what, you put in. And we have kind of made these such and such efforts to make that happen for not just for you, but other new hires. And this is the data that we have got from other new hires and how that has helped. So yeah, thanks to you that we were able to implement this. And, that way, it's empowering the employee to kind of come forward with new ideas more and more, because they know that they're being, heard, acknowledged, and that their ideas are being put into practice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really powerful. Well, thank you three so much. That kind of wraps up the majority of the big topics I wanted us to cover today. But before we close, we always like to give everyone one last opportunity to kind of give their words of wisdom and encouragement and advice for the people listening right now who are, they're looking at doing a new hire questionnaire for the first time, and they're just getting into this stuff. So I want to do that now. So maybe Sim, we'll start with you and then go to Heather, and then we'll close with Stephen. But what are your, in a sentence or two, your last, piece of advice for those listeners?
Well, for people who are creating or even, making those questionnaires, I would just say one line for them: keep it short and simple. Like, don't overcomplicate it with overcomplicated questions where people have to go think and come up with those fancy one-liners to answer. Keep it short and simple. That's it.
Love it. Heather, over to you.
I would say know what your goal is. What are you wanting to do with this information? What's the the future benefit to it, and start from there. And then you can craft the questions that you want to craft. And then like Sim, make sure you keep it short and simple. Don't give them a 50, page questionnaire kind of thing on there. Just kind of keep it short and sweet. And then wherever you can, if you get an opportunity, do try and do some sort of personal communication with them, whether it's a phone conversation. I know at one of the places that I work, we actually hand wrote cards that we would send intra-office mail to the person, just saying, hey, I'm your human resource professional. Here's what I do. I just want to welcome you to the organization. We have been asking you some questions. Thank you so much for doing that. And, so that can also give a personal touch to the doing of the surveys as well.
Yeah. Love that, Heather. Stephen, we'll give the last word to you.
Sure. One thing that you can do with that information, this comes to applying it, right, is, after you construct your questions and you get those answers, feel free to work those into conversation, so long as it's not, information that needs to stay private. But if it's something that you can use to improve that relationship with the employee, if it's something that they like, or a pastime that they enjoy, if they love hiking, ask them about their favorite hiking trail. Ask them the last time that they've enjoyed gone hiking. That question could be like, what do you enjoy doing in your pastime, or what can we do to help you do what you want to do to enjoy it? Definitely not that complicated of a question. That was terrible. But simplify that and just use that to improve the relationship of every person around. And that's kind of getting into social awareness, right? Like you are now kind of changing who you, not who you are, but you're kind of what's the word? You're becoming kind of fluid. You're matching the people that you take care of, and everybody stays on your side, and you become that person of trust. And sometimes it comes down to if this person's staying or not. You may be the thread that's keeping that person at the organization. So it could be a lot more of a crucial, important thing than you realize. So definitely don't overcomplicate it, but definitely do it with intention and purpose.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephen. Well, amazing advice from all three of you. Really appreciate having each of you on here. Just the unique perspectives and experiences you bring to the table. I always show this slide at the end of each of our conversations. If you want to know more about new hire questionnaires, check out our article in our HR encyclopedia that we have on the topic. We also have, I want to say 20 or 30 additional articles specifically on onboarding. So plenty to dig into there. And please go meet these panelists. Find them on LinkedIn. They each have member profiles on our HR Mavericks website, but we love them. We love to learn from them. They just know so much and are really generous, good people. So appreciate each of you for being here, and we hope that everyone has a great rest of their day. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Stephen.